This is where you get to look at the other candidates and ask them a question. They get 3 minutes to answer that question. You may not like it, understand it, or you may want to verify it. You get to then respond to that with a 1 minute. And we'll let you go back and forth at least once. But it's an opportunity, and I'll watch. And by the way, if these guys are taking notes and you're not answering the question and you're dodging it, they're going to ask you too. And they have every right to ask you a question to follow up as well.
My question is to Carl Mumpower. If you knew that you were not going to be the nominee, which of your 2 opponents would you choose to support?
As the front runner. You expect people to nip you on the tail a little bit, and you've seen a little bit of that tonight. You may see some more, that's okay. Gives you a chance to measure the maturity of the person doing it and my ability to take the heat. I can take the heat. I will support, here's all I'll say, I'll support whichever gentleman up here wins the nomination with full heart and spirit.
John, was that a good answer for you? Do you have a follow-up, or do you want to go ahead and pop a question on Mr. Campbell?
No follow-up, but since that was short, perhaps I can ask Spence a question.
Go right ahead.
How important is the Constitution of the United States to you, and why?
I think the Constitution of the United States is really the basis for everything I've done in most of my life. It took me a while to understand what it really means. In service to my nation as a member of the military for many years and wearing the uniform every day, I began to realize as a result of that the Constitution really is totally unique and totally just exactly what the founders intended it to be. And it was always an honor for me to wear the uniform. It was always an honor for me to support the Constitution, to help in a small way to defend America from its enemies, to help in a small way to build relationships between our allies, all in support of the ideals and goals of the founders, which obviously for Americans is extremely important. And I think that's why the Constitution means so much to me and why I talk about it all the time. But I would certainly say to you that I can't talk about it in the detail that my friend John knows about. So I've learned a lot from him in this process.
I was going to let Spence go next, and he can ask you, then Spence can then ask John, and then you'll get your turn. We'll just go that direction. So you get to ask whichever order you choose a question, one at a time.
Okay, Carl, if you had it to do over your record in City Council, what would you do differently?
I tried to smile more. It's tough to do over there. Now I want to answer another question. When I was elected in 2001, I put 2 things in my pocket. One is a copy of the Constitution. The other is a bracelet, and every suit I have has one in it. It says WWJD. Those are the 2 filters that I've used since 2001 consistently in Asheville City Council to stand up for what's right. And if you can go back through my voting record and sort it through, and I promise you, you will not find me violating either one of these. Thank you.
You have a question for John? Yes, sir.
John, just continuing along the lines of the Constitution, my understanding of the Constitution is that when the framers created the Congress, they intended actually that the Congress would be the center of power of our government. And it isn't that way necessarily anymore, although they've certainly figured out how to keep the money part of it under their control. What do you think has happened to the Congress over the centuries, and is it really something that needs to be addressed by people like us when we go to Congress?
The assumption in your question is quite correct, that when the framers wrote the Constitution in Philadelphia, they expected that the real power would be in the Congress, and precisely because money could not be spent from the Treasury, not a single dollar, without the approval of Congress. Now, what has happened over the years is that the presidency has taken on powers that were not intended in the original document, such as executive orders, which substitute for law duly passed by Congress. Also, the growth of the executive department. And on the other side, the Supreme Court, and Jefferson said this, has become the most dangerous branch because when it accumulates power, so that it starts telling both the national legislature and the state legislatures what they can and cannot do, that power can't be taken back away from it other than by impeaching the justices, which we have never done at the Supreme Court level. So the bottom line, and any political scientist knows this, every center of power seeks to reach out and grab additional power from wherever it can. And the only control on that is Congress, and Congress has become a bit of a toothless tiger. If they wanted to put the squeeze on the president to take back those powers, if they wanted to put the squeeze on the Supreme Court to take back those powers, they could do it. They have not, and I, for one, would push that.
I think before Carl, you get the answer, I think someone over here has a follow-up question.
If the Congress is the most important and should be the dominant branch of the government, then how do you explain that we have the president, the executive branch, and the judicial branch? I mean, how are they supposed to balance if one is designed to be dominant?
Well, actually, none of them were designed to be dominant, because that's what balance of powers is all about. The Congress can impeach a president, for instance. The Senate has the right to confirm Supreme Court justices, for example. They tried to design something in which each branch would stay to its own business and not interfere with the business of the others. They called that usurpation. That's an old language for stealing powers when you don't have a right to them. But that balance has been upset by the taking of power that doesn't belong in the executive and doesn't belong in the Supreme Court away from Congress, which is at the center.
Well, if the president is the chief executive and has the power to deploy the troops and to wage war with the authorization of Congress, then I'm unclear as to how the presidency has usurped power from Congress.
In war powers, no. The president has always been the commander-in-chief, starting with General George Washington, who later became president. However, in the area of executive orders, in the area of the growth of the federal government, that ornate building right next to the White House looks like a wedding cake writ large. When you're looking at the White House, it's to the right. The whole federal government was in that before 1933. Now, the number of federal employees is about the size of Vermont. So that's a growth of power that was not anticipated by the document.
While you can comment on that, I had a question on the
You
follow-up.
correctly identify the checks and balances that are noted in the Constitution. Thank you for doing that. Congress is not the most important body, it's just the biggest, and they control the purse strings, and that gives them some power. Thank you.
Spence, any thoughts?